Welcome once again to Money in Motion with Walt West, financial advisor and the founder of West Advisory Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Walt, when it comes to retirement planning, what's on your mind this week?
Well, I'm really worried if people are really ready to retire. I tell you, it's been a really interesting week. So it's
this month, this year, this last 16 months. So we've got we're going to try to make it as fun as possible. We have the Retirement Red Light Challenge. Red light, green light, yellow light. Are you ready to retire? And how many of us have to pump the brakes or slam the brakes on and go, maybe not yet? Yeah. Especially when we look back at the markets of last year, not only the stock market, but what happened to the bond market.
Yeah, absolutely.
This inflation that just won't go away right now. We keep seeing that the numbers are supposedly coming down, but I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the change at the grocery store.
People are worried, they're scared, they don't know, just this unknown that's out there. People just don't know how to deal with it, right? So they're not seeing the consistencies, the stability. There's just so many different things that are going on that just a lot of questions.
All right. So if you are playing at home, think of this for yourself. You can score, you can write it down. Red light, yellow light, or green light. Are you ready for retirement? I'm going to hit the financial advisor here with some questions. Number one here, how do I know if I can retire on time? How do I calculate how much I'm going to need in retirement? Red light, yellow light, green light. I know that's at least a yellow light for me because I don't know how to calculate what I'm going to need 20, 25, 30 years into a retirement after I'm no longer working. How do you answer that question for folks?
Well, really good question, and it's not right you write this on a piece of paper. It's not a hope, a dream, and a prayer. You just keep in your head and try to figure this out. I mean, it takes some analysis work to really determine that, right? So whether you have enough money to retire, I mean, the idea being is that, what is your money designed to do for you when you go into retirement, I think is the key element. But you have to, first start out with a budget, right? You got to start with a budget. Oftentimes, I have people come into the office and I'll ask them about a budget. It's like, I don't have a budget, right? I don't have a budget. So how do you know if you're ready to retire if you're at that place yet, if you don't know what you're going to spend in retirement? I think it's a critical element. And I don't care how you do it, but you got to look back at least 6 months of your income and say, or your expenses and say, hey, where have I been spending my money? When people go through that exercise, Spike, they find out they're spending money in areas that they said, why am I doing this? I mean, this money's completely falling through the cracks, and they button it up a little bit, right? So
I also got to ask you, between spouses, sometimes we not realize how much the left hand and the right hand are spending at the same time.
Oh, yeah, it's such a fun conversation with the folks when they come into the office because they learn a little about each other, right? It's pretty neat to see that dynamic take place when they come into the office because they're learning about each other that they're not asking these questions of themselves, right? And what that looks like. So, we get together and we talk about these things and bring these things to light. They don't realize how important it is. But once you determine that, it makes it much easier to determine, are you ready to retire, right? You want to get to that green light, right? You want to get that light green to know that you have a confidence that, hey, this is what I'm going to spend. I am ready. I got 18 months or 2 years or through whatever that time period is where I'm going to flip that switch and I'm going to go from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase. But, you got to start off with what's it going to take to maintain your lifestyle. That's the first important.
So, and in doing that, I'm imagining you have robust software that can help you, but you're putting in the inputs. And it's not just dividing, like the way I simply do the math is I try to take what I have saved, guessing a little bit of what I might have in Social Security. I can go on to SSA.gov and see what it is at my certain ages, depending on when I take it. But I'm imagining that I'm probably leaving out a lot of other factors that I need to put into that income calculation.
Absolutely. So, the idea behind income is, unfortunately, it's just not all your money, right? So you come up with a number, an income number, and you think it's going to it makes sense for you to start out with. Well, you're one benefactor of that money, right? You want to be the biggest benefactor, but your partner is there. Who's your partner? The IRS. They want a piece of that money. You got inflation eroding your buying power. The longer you need that money, the less it's going to be worth 10, 15, 20 years from now. So it's imperative that you figure that out, right? But you need some technical software like we have in order to really get a good, accurate picture of what that looks like. And we provide that to people, right? So this way they have a blueprint that they can work from to say, okay, wait, I think I need this much money, but wait a minute. I might have to work another year or two to really be able to accomplish that goal, right? So when you get later in life, what matters most is not necessarily saving more money to get you to your goal. It's either delaying retirement, which is the biggest benefactor, or spending less, right? So you have to understand, once you're getting to this place where you're getting close to make this transition in life, you gotta think of all these things that could potentially impact what.
So if you're sitting there watching the show and you're there with your spouse and you don't know what both of you are going to spend and you don't know what your monthly income is, let's at least give that one a yellow light for right now.
Exactly.
Although you've got a lot of great engineers too. You get people who come in with spreadsheets and say, I've put in my calculations, but aren't they often just like missing one or two, whether it's inflation or the rate of return or their tax rate on those investments?
Lo and behold, there's always something missing in those calculations, and which is great to have those conversations, because I think people, they appreciate that you're bringing light to their situation about, well, did you think about this, or did you think about that? And one of those things, what if things, I said, have you thought about if one of you got sick, right? Or did you figure about what if you passed away and how your income would actually change, right? All these things, or what if inflation continues to run at 5, 6, 7%? Well, how does that impact you,
I mean,
right?
and just that little small loophole right there alone, where you say, wait a minute, if one of my spouse passes away early, of course, there's the sadness and the grieving, but you're like, well, then I guess I have all of the rest of this left over for me to spend. But you actually lose in a couple of different things, taxes and the Social Security.
Yep, two negatives there, right? Well, the big negative, you lost your spouse. That's the biggest negative. But the idea is that, yeah, your income will go down because Social Security is going to be reduced because one of them is going to go away, right? Your ability to save on taxes is reduced because now you're going to be in a higher tax bracket with that income because you file as a single taxpayer opposed to a married filing jointly, right? There's a big gap between those two of what the tax rates look like.
And not just to be negative about it, we're just trying to make you aware of these kinds of things, but you can then, if you sit down with a financial advisor, work on ways to make sure that these gaps don't hurt your ability to stay retired, especially starting with something like the lab session.
Right. A lab session is the critical part of starting any plan like this, because what it does, it identifies all the components of the plan to start to build that holistic approach of your plan. So taking a deep dive into your financial situation to determine if there's money falling through the cracks, right? So, are you giving too much back to the IRS in taxes, right? That dilutes your income. Are you taking money from your accounts or your income sources the right way, right? Oftentimes I see this all the time. Once you go through this analysis process and go through lab session, you can identify, right? Oftentimes people will find that, wow, if I take my money from these different buckets opposed to the way I thought I was going to do it, I actually save myself thousands of dollars, right? I mean, the net worth number later in life is much larger if you use the right withdrawal order, right? And people are completely unaware of that, right? So, but it takes something like a lab session that we provide complimentary to learn how that's potentially impacting you.
Right. We're going to take a very short break right now. If you want to, you can act on this right away. You can start your own complimentary retirement lab session. You can call the phone number. You can use the QR code. You've done this at restaurants the last couple of years. Open your phone to the camera function, point it at the black and white box down at the bottom of the screen, and when it activates, it'll take you right over to Walt's website for West Advisory Group. Answer a couple of questions. You can schedule your appointment, or you could use the phone number right here, 888-585-8701. More Money in Motion with Walt West, financial advisor, when we get back right after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Money in Motion with financial advisor Walt West and the founder of West Advisory Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle, and today we're doing the Retirement Red Light Challenge. Red light, yellow light, green light. Are you ready for retirement? But the kinds of questions, Walt, that you'll ask people, and more importantly, help them work through to know if they're ready for retirement. My next question is, do you know the most tax efficient order to withdraw money from your retirement accounts? What are we talking about here? Don't I just take from the largest account first?
Yeah, well, I would say that would be red for a lot of people, right? In my experience and working with people, oftentimes they don't even ask that question, right? What is the most efficient way to take these distributions, right? So, that withdrawal order is a critical element, but, there's three places you can have your money, right? Taxable buckets, tax-deferred buckets, and tax-free buckets. Most people today, their biggest bucket is the tax-deferred bucket because that's what they've been taught to do, right? So they oftentimes don't have options, right? So they got to pull it all from that tax-deferred bucket if they need their investments to support their income. But unfortunately, that tax liability in that bucket also causes any other source of income to be taxed at a potentially higher level, Social Security being one of them. No, folks, Social Security is not tax-free, unfortunately. It is taxable, right? So the idea here is when you start talking about what's the best withdrawal order, what you might find is that maybe we're to back up that conversation a little bit and saying, how can we diversify our tax buckets? By doing that, that allows us to come up with a much more efficient tax strategy in the distribution phase, right? If we can align our tax buckets more in line with what our goals are from an income standpoint, you'll find that you'll save literally hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in taxes in the future, right? So the idea is moving those buckets around.
I want you to say hundreds, thousands,
absolutely. Over time, absolutely. It could be the difference of hundreds, if not thousands of dollars difference that stays in your pocket. Not in the government's pocket, your pocket, and your family's pocket, right? You worked hard, People have worked hard all their life to save this money. Their goal is to keep that money, right? They want to be the biggest benefactor of that, right? So
they're not just out of control of what's going to happen. I often think, well, my taxes are going to be what the taxes are. I can't help. I got to pull the money out. I'm in a certain. You can have some control over your taxes, but you've got to take control of it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's definitely there's mandatory taxes. And there's voluntary taxes, we call them, right? Mandatory taxes is that bucket. Most people don't want to change that bucket and realign it to make it more tax efficient because they say, well, I got to pay tax on that right now. Well, okay, that's true. But you're going to pay tax on it. That's a mandatory tax. There's no way out of that. If you do nothing and you don't make any adjustments to that, we call that a voluntary tax, and oftentimes that tax is much larger, and I would say hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more than you actually have to pay. We run analysis for people to show that so they can actually visualize the difference between mandatory taxes and voluntary, and people are simply shocked by the difference of what that looks like. And the longer you live, the worse it gets, right?
Yeah.
So it's a real issue. So the conversation needs to start with what are your tax buckets? Then second is how do we distribute that money? Which is the most tax efficient way to do it? But if it's all sitting in that one bucket, you can't have a real good conversation about that because you don't have a lot of choices. Choices are critical in retirement.
If you're unsure of where your tax buckets are, then this one is going to have to be a red light for you.
Absolutely.
I certainly know it is for myself. I need help with this in these different areas. The next thing I want to ask about that income strategy, red light, yellow light, green light, are you ready to retire, is how do you stress test the income stream? Again, I'll go back to, I simplified it in my life. I look at what I've saved. I think maybe I'll be retired for 25 years, and then I divide it by the years, the months, with my Social Security, and I think, oh boy, I hope that, is that enough stress testing to see if I'm going to have enough for retirement?
No, you got to take a deeper dive in that, right? So I would say that, the biggest concern for retirees is having more life than money. right? No doubt. Every time I meet with somebody, we start talking about this subject, that is their biggest concern, more life than money. I look at retirement in 3 phases: your go-go years, slow-go years, and no-go years, right? So those go-go years are different for everybody. Those go-go years is when you're trying to do all those things on your bucket list, you're running, you're doing all kind of stuff, and then you get to a point in life where things start to slow down, right? And you don't really do as much, you slow down, and then you get to a point where you don't really do much at all, right? You just kind of hang out the house and do your thing, right? So those 3 phases. So when you talk about stress testing your income strategy, you got to take that into consideration, right? So your income strategy needs to be, number one, needs to be reliable, right? We call it mailbox money. How much income is your mailbox money? Mailbox money is money that's coming in every single month, guaranteed. Doesn't matter what the stock market's doing, doesn't matter what's happening, you know it's going to show up. It's that other money, that unreliable money, that's where a lot of the stress test needs to be done. How will the stock market impact it? How will inflation impact it? How will taxes impact it? So you got to look at all those pieces. And then the one big thing is, what happens if you get sick, right?
Yeah.
How will my income needs increase? So we talk about.
Let's look at a nest egg of $500,000, $7 to $750,000, even $1 million. If one in a couple needs to go into long-term care, how quickly do we burn through 300, 400, 500, half of the savings in the matter of a few years? What are the average costs again of long-term care?
About $10,000 to $12,000 a month. You figure $100,000 to $120,000 a year. So to your point, if you have $300,000, $400,000, 3-4 years, that's gone, right? That's gone. So that goes. And here's the biggest issue with that. That's especially if you're married, right? And you have one spouse that would need that care, and you have to spend that type of money. What happens to the surviving spouse, the community spouse, when something happens, right? Where's their income come from, right? So these are things.
So when you talk about taking care of risks, you're actually, in part, insuring the income stream over time. It's not just insuring, your own health, which obviously is not going to get better as we get older, but you're insuring the actual investments. So are we talking about leveraging? Are you at this point? Because I know you say that what you do, it's not about a product. What we do is a process, definitely. Yep. Mm-hmm. But are there product tools that can help in having us leverage our own long-term care needs down the road?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the industry, the financial industry, the insurance industry has done a really good job of, number one, identifying the reality of these risks and what they look like, but they've also done a good job of engineering products, tools, we like to call them, to help solve some of these problems, right? And these tools are very flexible, they're easy to use, they're much easier to understand today, and they grow with you over time, right? So it's not a use it or lose it type proposition, whether it be insurance or traditional long-term care, which is something that's kind of fallen by the wayside because it's so unpredictable what that looks like, right? But with the industry being so creative in what they've done, they find life insurance policies, they give you this benefit for long-term care benefits, but what it does, it gives you peace of mind. But it's a great legacy tool as well, because these tools are all tax-free, right? We talk a lot about taxes on this program, right? So these tools are tax-free, right? So that is critical, right? So you get to keep all the money, right? You don't have to give any of it back to the government. So, and you start looking at these and building these into your overall financial plan as you look at it holistically, right? These are things that you're stress testing from an income perspective.
Thank you for bringing it back to stress testing. I don't know if I've done enough stress testing. I'll probably give myself an absolute red light on this one, but this is what you will do with the complimentary lab session. We got to go out to break, but what all are you going to cover in the lab session?
Lab session is designed to spend 60 minutes dedicated time to do a financial exam of your financial situation. The most important thing, you'll find out if you have money falling through the cracks and how you can plug up those cracks by determining whether you're paying too much in taxes or you're simply don't have the right income strategy that's reliable for the rest of your life, so you're not in a situation you have more life than money, right? These are critical pieces of this, and of course, helping you ask better questions to get the critical facts for yourself and for your family.
Well, we're going to take a very short break. Call the phone number you see right down here on the bottom of the screen so you can get started on your own complimentary retirement lab session talking about your income, estate planning, taxes, and so much more dedicated to you. No cost for our television viewers. The only cost is the time it takes for you to dial that number, 888-585-8701. More with Walter West, WW, when we get back right after this.
When was the last time you saw your financial professional? Are you getting the most out of the strategy that was created for you? Although you've done a great job finding someone to help plan for your future, are you 100% sure that you were given the right strategy? We can help answer these questions and more with a complimentary second opinion evaluation. We will take a look at what you have in place and then help determine if you're well positioned to get the most out of your future retirement income. In the event that it is not, we can help by making suggestions and showing you how to get on the right path. You wouldn't get just one opinion when it comes to a major health decision, so why would you treat your most important financial decision with such disregard? Call today for your no-cost, no-obligation second opinion evaluation to see if you're getting the most out of your retirement income plan.
Welcome back to Money in Motion, your retirement money in motion with Walt West, financial advisor and the founder of West Advisory Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Today we're doing one of my favorite programs, the Retirement Red Light Challenge. Red light, yellow light, green light. Are you ready for a retirement? Or I don't want people blowing through the red light. And a lot of times that happens. We have to turn back around and go back to work because they don't answer these questions. And before you jump into retirement, since you've never done it before, please sit down with someone who's done hundreds, if not thousands, of retirement plans. Answer these questions all the time. I've got another one for you. For you folks out there, I want you to ask yourselves, do you know all of your options when it comes to how and when to take Social Security, Medicare, and long-term care? You're a financial advisor. How are you helping out with all the rest of these decisions?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that question.
Yeah, right? I loaded you with a lot. I threw 4 fastballs at you at once.
No doubt, right? They're very big topics and extremely important topics, right? And my experience is that people don't know everything they need to know when it comes to Social Security, Medicare, and long-term care, right? So we'll just go to the middle one, the Medicare, right? So Medicare is a big one, right? Obviously, when you turn 65, you are then eligible for Medicare, right? Depending on your situation, if you're still working, you may not have to sign up for Medicare, but if you're not, obviously you're going to have to sign up at 65, right? So, but one of the things that people need to understand, Medicare is not going to take care of everything. You need to spend some time understanding how to supplement Medicare. It's only designed to really cover 80% of your expenses. So I make sure people are aware that if they're 3 months, almost 6 months before turning 65, they need to really sit down with a specialist that understands Medicare, have a meaningful conversation of what it looks like. Because all Medicare plans are not created equal, right? And they're very specific, very individualized, and there's a lot of things to unpack when you start talking about Medicare. But one of the big things with Medicare that people are unaware of is what does it cost, right?
Right.
So Medicare, typically in today's dollars, it's like $160 for Medicare Part B. But what people are unaware of until they find out later is that your income determines what your premium is, right? It could be as low as $160, it could be as high as almost $500, right? And I asked people, I said, hey, if you're going to pay $500 for your Medicare, does that mean you have better Medicare Part B? Absolutely not. It's the same one, right? So it's a form of a tax, right? So understanding what that looks like, but it's based on your income, right? So understanding not only how Medicare works.
And when you're saying income, I mean, we're talking about what we're taking out from our retirement accounts. So if you have a monthly lifestyle of what, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month, but you've saved the money, that means your Medicare will be much higher.
Absolutely. You look at your tax form, your 1040 form. What shows up on that tax form is how they determine what your premium might be for. So you have to not only look at Medicare for what it is from a standpoint of the health insurance side of it, but what it's going to cost you in the future. Now, when you start taking a look at long-term care, for example, the idea is the first thing you got to decide for yourself, are you willing to accept that risk or you want to transfer that risk, right? So it all depends on your financial situation. Do you have enough money to self-insure for that or you don't, right? But you need to stress test your situation to determine how you'll be impacted by that decision, right? Or by that event that might happen for you, right? So there's a lot that you have to look at, but until you can visualize the impact that you may have with long-term care, it's very hard to make good decisions.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to throw a fastball high and inside at you. Are you a fan today still of long-term care standalone policies on their own? Have you been making any of those kind of recommendations over the last few years? Or do you use other tools?
Well, no, the traditional long-term care strategy, we kind of stay away from that. And the reason because we like predictability in retirement. And those are very unpredictable, right? So the idea is what's unpredictable about them is the premiums. The insurance companies reserve the right to change the premiums from year to year based on how they're handling claims, right? So we don't like that unpredictability in somebody's retirement plan. We want something more predictable. So, I've said in other sessions that, the industry's been very good at designing programs that are much more predictable, but we do think they make sense. Not for everybody, right?
Okay.
It really is a situation by situation whether someone should take advantage of it, right? So, and again, it is about what people think about that risk. Some people think it's never going to happen to them, and you just can't get past that, right? It's unfortunate, but they can't get past that. There's others in saying, hey, I want to make sure I leave a legacy to my family. I want to protect. I want to maintain my independence, my integrity. I want to make sure that is all good, right? So I'm going to protect it. I'm going to transfer that risk. So it's a real personal decision on whether you enter in one of these contracts or you simply say, I'm just going to self-insure or I'm going to hope for the best. Right?
When you give clients or prospects and families some of the retirement red light challenge, when you walk in and say, do you know your income? Have you talked about long-term care? Do you know everything about Social Security? How many of them can pass even 50% of the red light challenge?
Yeah, not many. Not many can. So,
and it's not to their fault. It's just that there's a lot.
And you never like to put anybody on the spot, but we're there to educate them so they can ask the better questions to get that. So, coming to our lab sessions that we give complimentary here, that for 60 minutes, it is all about becoming more educated so you can formulate better questions, you can position yourself better with a holistic plan. It really takes a deep dive and it does a diagnostic test of your financial situation to make sure all these pieces are covered, whether it be paying too much in taxes, money falling through the cracks when it comes to potential long-term care planning, or simply that you don't have the right income strategy. You need to take a look at all this, look at this all holistically, and the lab session puts you on the right track for holistic planning.
Well, what I like what you're saying is that it's not a product. It is a process. It can be overwhelming, and you're going into retirement for the very first time. You don't have to go alone, though. You can call the phone number right here. You can use the QR code. You can get started with a financial professional like Walt West of West Advisory Group. Call 888-585-8701. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.